quiet in the lead up to the 2016 election. The other part of this is a meeting that happened in February 2017 in the Oval Office where Trump allegedly agreed to how Michael Cohen would ultimately be reimbursed for fronting the money to pay Stormy Daniels. Now, jurors have already heard a lot about Michael Cohen from other witnesses, and it's frankly been largely unflattering. They've called him and painted a picture of an attorney who was aggressive, one who was really unpredictable. But at the same time, other witnesses have made clear, including Hope Hicks, one of Trump's closest White House aides, that she doubts Michael Cohen would do anything like this without Donald Trump's approval or knowing. So ultimately, we're going to have to see what happens when Michael Cohen takes the stand. You can bet that Donald Trump's defense attorneys will continue to try to undercut his credibility. They'll try to point to the fact that he's a convicted liar, and they'll try to essentially say that he was acting on his own accord when he made this payment to Daniels. The prosecution has tried to basically prepare the jury for that potential. They've made it's no secret that they've acknowledged that he's a complicated witness, but they've tried to sort of mitigate that by introducing documents, including texts and emails just in the last few days that they say supports what Michael Cohen will testify to when he takes the stand. So ultimately, we're going to have to see, but the issue of credibility here for Michael Cohen could determine whether or not Donald Trump is convicted or not.
All right, Zach Cohen, thanks so much. All right, let's talk more about the trial and expectations. Gene Rossi is a former federal prosecutor and a former U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. Gene, great to see you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, thank you. All right, so how important will it be, or maybe even challenging, will it be for prosecutors to get more information from Cohen, more than what the public has already heard from him in television interviews or even in his testimony on Capitol Hill?
Well, here's where the rubber meets the road. I'm sure the prosecutors have met with Mr. Cohen probably 10 to 15 times in preparation for his testimony. And I want to stress this. We don't know what he has provided to the prosecutors that is in addition to what he said publicly, either at other hearings, other trials, or in debriefings. But I have to say this. If Michael Cohen does poorly and does not connect the false invoices to the alleged catch and kill in effort to affect the election, then Donald Trump will be acquitted or there will be a hung jury. It's as simple as that. But if he does reasonably well, in spite of his warts and his credibility challenges, if he does reasonably well and provides some color, some editorial corroboration as to why they did the false invoices, then the prosecutors in closing will have a case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump is guilty of the crime. They have to connect those false, I call them the souffle invoices. They have to connect the souffle to the alleged attempt to influence the election or to commit tax fraud.
And those invoices or any other kind of documentation, wouldn't the defense attorneys already know about it? Wouldn't they have already seen it from, say, discovery? Or can they be surprised by new documentation or invoices during trial, during testimony?
Well, Frederica, I don't think there are any new documents that they're going to provide. But I will say this. When a witness is meeting with the prosecutor and provides inculpatory evidence against the defendant, the prosecutor doesn't have a duty to turn that over or disclose it. But if there's evidence that goes to their credibility, yes. So we don't know exactly what he has said, Mr. Cohen, in all of his debriefings. He may be coming out with stuff that we have never heard of, conversations that we didn't know about. So that's where the challenge will be for cross-examination. If the defense attorneys hear of something that they never heard about, then that's what they call recent fabrication, and his credibility may take some hits if it's very important information that wasn't disclosed earlier.
So tomorrow prosecutors will get their first stab. So in their direct, will it be their focus to try to anticipate what that cross-examination is going to be like, try to undermine the defense attorney's likely questions or even approach to, poking holes in the testimony, ruining, or I should say ruining, but trying to destroy the credibility of Michael Cohen? Might that be part of the strategy so that cross-examination does not have the fireworks that usually cross-examination has?
You just adopted the Rossi rule, okay? When I had witnesses like Michael Cohen, I had witnesses that were 10 times worse, frankly. Okay. When I had witnesses like that and I was the prosecutor, you hit the nail on the head. I would try to diffuse the cross by bringing out on direct their problems, their lies, their hiccups, their inconsistencies, so that